Hi guys, thanks for joining. I'm Amanda Armagast. Today we're going to be talking about the history of words.
And I'm Dr. Abbasi for Essence, and it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Lily. Please, Lily, go ahead.
Hey, I'm Lily Beck. I'm an etymology hobbyist. I went to UCLA for linguistics, and I'm here to talk about origins, Irano-Slavic origins.
Are you still a hobbyist if you went to school for linguistics?
Because my work isn't revolving around it anymore. Even when I was doing like research out of school, it was more neurolinguistic than it was like proper classical linguistics. So I like to say hobbyist just because it feels like I'm not put like my feet aren't as much to the fire.
So
There's a lot
what
of people who really, who will really like rattle you for credentials and all that. And I just feel like having a bachelor's isn't quite enough.
what is neurolinguistics?
Neurolinguistics has to do with language faculty in the brain, language production, language comprehension. This is like Broca's, Wernicke's, but it extends much farther than that. I'm sure, Dr. Abbasi, that
I was going to talk about that, but I don't have to.
yeah. I mean, yeah, interconnected nature, we could talk about it this whole episode, but I think we're gonna have it right interchange. We're gonna go from
Absolutely. No, but you come yourself from a diverse linguistic background. You want to tell us, about your linguistic background? Like, I'm talking about linguistic, but cultural linguistic background. And we all understand without language, there's no culture.
Right.
So
right.
why don't you tell us a little about your diverse linguistic background?
Right. Actually, that's a really good point. You really can't peel language from culture. It's like a dance and its dancer. It's like a dancer and her dance. That's what language and culture really is.
Yep.
And it feels like for me, had I not grown up speaking Russian first, I actually don't know how monolinguistic people are linguists because they only speak one language, so they don't know what it's like to code switch and enter another mind. Like a lot of times I'll have to like retreat to my Russian mind if I don't feel like my English mind is, having this sort of like discourse that I want it to have. But culturally, linguistically, it feels like having the Azerbaijani father, having the Russian mother, Eastern, and having the American upbringing. I grew up in Brooklyn and Jersey. That juxtaposed East and West in a way that helped me really understand like the superset of human behavior and like communication as a whole, and just realizing like, we all want to be heard, and we
Yeah.
all have different systems of achieving that. And grammar and syntax and everything, it's so interesting to see how much geopolitics and how much culture and how much history informs all of it. It's such a feedback system, just like the brain, just like existence. I mean, it's all fractals of each other.
Yeah. Now, I absolutely have to ask.
Mm.
Azeri danışıran.
No, I know.
No, you don't.
Только
Azeri
русский, это
danışıran.
русский. I speak Russian and English. That's it.
Yeah.
No Farsi, no Azerbaijani. You
Um,
speak
that
Azerbaijani?
my parents are actually both Azeri,
Hmm.
which in Iran we call it Turkish, but it's very close to Turkish, but it's not Turkish, it's a different language.
That's right.
And I grew up actually with Azeri and I learned Persian on the street,
Mm.
what you say. So I totally understand what you say. When you grow up with multiple languages, you have a different perspective in life.
Hmm.
Especially, when you go, if I go and look up a random word in a dictionary, I see in Persian versus English, the same word in Persian has multiple meaning in English. All those names in English has different kind of meaning in Persian. So a word is created to describe something to a certain extent, and depending on all the things that that word describes, that is actually the soul of a culture.
Yeah, I remember learning about that when I was studying cultures in school, learning about how people native to Alaska have so many different words for snow compared to people who live in the US because that's just part of their culture is being around a lot of snow. So they have different ways of describing it.
And I think somebody like you, Lily,
Yeah.
who have grown up with many languages, they can practically put themselves in different situation and have a better understanding of different cultures than somebody who has grown up with one language. But you said you grew up with the Russian and English. What would you
Yeah.
say? What would you say if you would characterize that? What's the biggest differences in English and Russian? What did you notice that your schoolmates wouldn't understand, or did you have any problem there that you would think of
I
something and you couldn't express it in one language versus another?
Yeah, I mean there's several instances of that, or even just like your disposition of yourself in relation to the world. I feel like because it's so subject verb object in English, it's so subject forward. It's very I, me, like my influence on the world around me. There's a lot more coalescing with Russian. It's like у меня, it's like there's these certain cases that'll be like of mine or of me, and like being more of a constituent, which
Yeah,
makes sense if you think about its political history.
yeah,
Oneness is a very much more like accessible idea in Russian. Just growing up with the language, it feels like it's almost like a little more spiritual to me.
yeah.
Um, Funny enough, actually, the word for God is a Persian borrowing in Russian. Really
What did
interesting.
he say?
That's a
What did
heavy
he
one.
say?
It's Buch. Buch is God, which it's Old Persian for to
Yeah,
give or bestow. Yeah,
yeah.
to give or bestow. But I mean, everything you're saying is so on point. It really like Wittgenstein said that the limits of your language are the limits of your life. Limits of your language are the limits of your life. So I felt like growing up, I even still have more flowery language as an English speaker, which I think is remnants of being a Russian speaker because it is just so extravagant of a language.
Yeah.
But growing up, I definitely felt like there was an intensity to my emotion that I was harder to translate to English without using a lot of like, either longer words or like these like intensifiers or whatever, like
Yeah.
Russians are intense in the English American person's mind. What were
Yeah,
you
can you give an example of like what you would say?
Well, there's like something for Russian, there's a word, for instance, called жалость. Жалость is like a pity love. It's like a pity love. And I don't know how to say that in Russian. I mean in English, excuse me. It's
Well,
like,
pity
yeah.
love.
Oh yeah, it's a pity love. It's like you love someone out of feeling obliged, but
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. And that's
That
some yeah.
that reminds me of a movie. It's called Downsizing with Matt Damon.
Yeah, I know that
When
movie.
she asked him, "What kind of love you give me?" The American have seven love, and one of them
Oh
is
yeah, yeah.
love. Now, interestingly, the word God in Persian means Khuda, which is translated is self-coming, coming from self,
Oh,
Khuda.
yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I love what you said about the Wittgenstein and
Mhm.
what he said. Wittgenstein obviously was the Austrian philosopher, language philosopher. In German, he said, die Grenzen deiner Sprache sind die Grenze deines Lebens, meaning that the border of your the word is the border of your language, or border of your language is the border of your word. Actually, I put that phrase in my dissertation 20 years ago
Whoa.
because there are other languages. Now, we have languages that humans speak, but the language is a concept. And I would like to go 100,000 years back in history.
Yeah.
Why did we have language? You did neurolinguistic, you know our connection in our brain. What did you learn? What do you know about why do we even have language?
I mean, the why, it's more of a philosophical take, so I don't know if it's a right or wrong answer. Why is because, I mean, I love that definition, or I love the Persian word for God. I mean, yeah, for the self, involving the self. It reminds me of Brahmin and just Buddhism. But this, I like, it feels like we have a crumb of God in us, and we are just emulating the oneness of everything. And it's part of the reconnecting. It's like, think of a single neuron. A single neuron is useless, but when you have many neurons in these like networks of synapses, that's where the power comes in. It's the connection. So it's
Mhm.
in the same vein, like humans, a single human is more or less useless. And the more that you have working in tandem, the stronger that
Mhm.
the outcome is. So communication is really the means of working together, cooperation.
So
Um,
how long do you think we have had language as a humanity? What do you think?
well, I mean, they say, well, so for the origins that we're talking today, Proto-Indo-European, that's going to be like 6,500 years ago, which is not long at all.
Mhm.
That's when we were first stringing together phonemes, like units of sound and assigning meaning to them.
Mhm.
I mean, that's probably 10,000 years ago. I mean, it's hard to say for many reasons. I mean, all of this is like qualitative data, reconstructed language going backwards, like crossed with archaeological data. A lot of things like they're not material. So, especially with the oral, right? There's nothing fossilizing when you're speaking. So it's
Yeah.
really hard to say.
Yeah.
Um, but as far as Proto-Indo-European, which is the basis of Russian and Persian, that's 6,500 years ago. That's around the Russian steppe area, the Pontic Caspian
Mhm.
steppe. And that's when people were using at first like pronouns, I, me, who, and then numbers, one, two, three, whatever, to denote a trait or something, or explaining something. And then finally, one of the first phrases to emerge when people were first like grunting and making noises and trying to systemize these noises, really interestingly enough, was the phrase imperishable fame. Imperishable fame was one of the first ideas to come out of human
Mhm.
collections of humans that, yeah, imperishable fame, which I think to me is more of like, leaving a legacy through children, posthumous, like the man dies, but his ideas live kind of thing. Like, but we have been wanting to leave a lasting impression since we first started putting words together and
Even
trying to say
before.
things to each other, which
No,
is, of course,
Even before then, we've been
yeah,
wanting to leave a lasting
so
impression.
according to Chomsky, language is something that we are hardwired to learn a language. And there
yeah.
are good proof of that. The good proof of that is when we enslaved a lot of people from Africa in many of the islands in America. These people didn't speak each other's language. When they were put in one place, they actually they used English words because that was what was used, but then they made their own grammar and language. Now we call that pidgin English.
Mhm.
That is that is what Chomsky says. We are hardwired to learn a language, and that hardwiring we know it has been going on for a long, long time. And based on that as well, there's a good indication that humanity learned the sign language before we learned vocal language.
Mm,
Having said that, we have a good understanding that some primates, especially orangutans even, they can learn sign language. They don't have the vocal
mm.
capacity to create language. Do you think animals have language? Oh, Amanda is listening now.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's open languages and closed languages, but I think that we really underestimate the communicative capacity of other species. I think that we're really obsessed with ourselves, and we think
Yeah.
it's still like heliocentric issues, like we think geocentric ideas, like we're the center of the universe, the Earth. Um, were you going to say something, Amanda?
Well,
Oh,
Amanda, I think it's a really big animal lover, and
oh,
I think and I agree with that. That our capacity to speak language is a quality. It's quantitative, not a qualitative understanding. That at certain point, quantitative changes become qualitative. But I think you can communicate with your animal pretty good, Amanda,
I
don't
can
you?
communicate with all of my animals.
Yeah. And
I think, yeah, mammalians, mammals are going to have certain like brain wavelengths that they need at. You know what I mean? So Chomsky's really big on universal grammar. I love this
Mhm.
theory. I think it's brilliant. It's why kids under the age of 12 or 13 in their critical period they can acquire any language with enough of an exposure, like passing a certain threshold of exposure, they just click into the grammar. A lot of times when you talk to people who are polyglots who speak a lot of languages, they'll say it's just clicking into a grid. So it's like really everything, 369 Tesla, everything's waves and vibrations. And so it's this circuit that our circuits are plugging into. And the biggest thing with and Chomsky's just the best. He's the best. He's brilliant because he was able to quantify a qualitative theory like that. Because it's like, how do you really measure thought? How do you really, a massless thing, obviously. And he just found systems around it. And the biggest thing really is that we, I think that this also would allow for things like telepathy and stuff. We really underestimate how powerful the human form is. It's unreal. We're like alien mammals. It's like super, like, it's really, really incredible. I feel very blessed to be human.
Yeah.
And to be a multilingual human. Because language really does enrich your life. And I recommend everyone and anyone to learn as many languages as you can. Even just one more than you do already. If you speak one, it's really great. But yeah, having mammals and humans together to me makes so much sense. It would expand our brain's ability to communicate. I feel like because we're so convinced that we could only speak, with our really impressive mechanisms. This is insane. Voice box chords are that technology is out of this world.
Yeah.
And like just because think about dolphins. They were like, how are they talking? Like think
Right.
about the echolocation, stuff like that. They must be having the most rich, like exciting conversations. I mean, through ways that we can't even imagine.
The
That's
ways we cannot imagine.
Yeah, that's exactly what I always say about my chickens. Every time I go outside, they're talking to each other. I know they're having conversations. And then I actually sometimes I can understand a little bit certain sounds mean certain things and certain movements mean certain
Chicken
things.
whisperer.
They have language for sure.
No,
Yeah.
if considering a language is to communicating one individual to the other, it's ridiculous to believe that we only human, the whole the 5 billion years of evolution,
Right.
it just gave it to us. That's
I know,
ridiculous.
exactly.
Now, having said that, now eventually we consider its advantage to learn a language. Eventually, we developed a method to when we were hunting together to make a sign that you go that way, I go that way, that increase our chances to not go hungry today. And eventually, we learned to vocalize it. And guess what? As soon as we vocalized, the art came in, singing came in, and woman chose the man, and man chose the woman who had a better voice, better singing. And so we sort of auto-selected ourselves and developed our vocal cords. And you would be surprised how fast those abilities are inherited. And somebody with a horrible voice, you just listen to somebody and you have no desire to be with that person and vice versa. So, but then eventually we have these phonemes, we have these vocals, vowels, and then we now in how many center of the world, Lily, do you think we developed? And we know language develops in you put a bunch of people together, language develops. But the main language that we deal today, can you guide us a little? What are and they're interconnected, I understand, but how many different kind of main language group do we consider existing today?
Main language groups? I'd have to do a quick search of that. I mean,
Obviously, you're an expert in the European or
yeah, I do a lot of Indo-European, which honestly sometimes I feel disappointed by. But because there's just so much more out there. But even Azerbaijan, which we wanted to touch on, That's part of the Altaic, like Turkic. That's like
Mhm.
35 right there. Indo-European must be like, I don't know, 160 something. I'll look into it right now. Should I
Yeah.
really quickly wanted to mention something about ASL before I forget that you said earlier? Just so you know, it is the same grammar that's acquired by a hearing person. Kids in ASL, babies in ASL will babble. They'll babble with their hands. Like it's completely the same acquisition of language. And the thing with the voice you were saying, our voices are an extension of our nervous system. So there's a lot of information in the voice, how you're doing, what your health is, immunologically, genes, like epigenetically, what's being released, what's there, like, and also, of course, compatibility. Like, I have a lower register. You'd be surprised of what that leaves my negative space with. It's like not the same as my girlfriends who have really high voices,
Yeah.
they have like, it sculpts a different reality. And the voice is really underestimated. I'm just gonna look up really quick
While you're looking that up, I want to have a personal history. When I was a teenager, I was attracted to a young woman, and I tried to woo her and so on. It didn't happen. At the end, she told me she's attracted to men with much deeper voice.
Oh,
Oh my
God.
that is sad.
You can't help it.
No, she can't help it. No, no, that was really fair because I couldn't make my voice deeper. There was, I said, yeah, I'm a rational person. I understand that. I move on because, well, but deeper people with deeper, higher amount of testosterone, they have deeper voice. So you see that the nature has selected us, and like they have even done that study in Africa. The men with the deeper voice, they have more, they're polygamists, obviously. The men with deeper voice, they have more wives in
Mm.
Africa, in
But
any subculture.
I would, yeah, I guess, yeah, I was gonna say, because it could be like the concept of man, like a lot of this kind of similar to like how Azerbaijan is Turkic, but it has Indo-Iranian roots. It's really, or like even with the Iranian and the Russian, it's not that they're like structurally similar, it's because they have had so much historic and cultural exchange and contact that it starts informing each other. In the same vein, it's like people have ideas of what everyone's role playing, everyone's, and we're a lot of times it's a hologram and a hologram. I mean, we're acting the way we think we're supposed to be acting. We're it's an emulation instead of an actual, like, authentic expression. But sometimes people will get these concepts. They have a self concept and they have a concept of what their partner is like. They have a concept of what their work should be like, of what blah blah blah, like as mothers, as but like it's, and so a lot of times you'll see kind of these standardized ideas of what a man should be. And often it is a deeper voice and it is a bigger stature. I know people who won't date under 6 whatever. And I'm like, dude,
Right.
that's
So,
I mean, you're cutting away everyone because they don't hit a height. Come on. That's a little.
no, but I think that lots of that is biologically hardwired. She couldn't help it. It
Well,
was just who she was attracted
it does go the other way around. Like, there's this book, How to Influence People, and there's a part about voices. I think that's in that book where it says, as a woman, if you're trying to convince a man of something, if you make your voice softer or higher, you're more likely to have the answer that you're looking for versus if you make it lower.
So you can actually use linguistic knowledge to influence the outcome of your environment. Wow. So
but on the other hand, if someone was modulating their voice in front of me, I would distrust them. If I could sense that there was this sort of custom tailoring visible voice. Yeah,
are you talking about that Valley voice? Valley girl?
Yeah, Valley girl. I mean, we all went, we went to high school in America. I definitely didn't sound the way I naturally sound when I was in high school. My Russian mother would be like, "What is this? What are you doing? Why are you putting this on?" Okay.
But have you noticed that the people who are multilingual, they have different voice pitch in different languages?
Amanda, you're multilingual.
No, I know sign language.
Yeah. But I think, we considering that at least the languages we all speak has a very, very close origin we should talk a little about, this the Indo-European
Yeah.
languages. Would you mind to enlighten us a little about the
Well,
origin?
let's circle back to the one. Okay, so I was totally off before. All the branches that there are is 147. So 147 branches and the whole tree of language on a global scale.
That's a
There's
lot.
7,000 languages living right now. Yeah, that's a lot. So Indo-European has 10. Turkic, like I was saying, has 35. That Altaic, which also has Turkey, Azerbaijan, like Japanese, Korean, the Altaic branch. Yeah, it's actually not accepted by everyone in the linguistic community, but
Mhm.
it's like, Anatolian, all that. So 147 branches in the world, 10 of which are in Indo-European. They dominate the English language and grammar.
Mhm.
The Greek, I don't know if I just saw Big Fat Greek Wedding. Everyone on my comments there's always one person that's like, this is like the dad from Big Fat Greek Wedding. And I never saw the film. Have you two seen it?
I have seen it. My big fat Greek wedding. Yeah, I have
But
seen it.
the
It's very
father,
funny.
yeah, very funny. The father character just says every word can be traced to Greek. And it's a joke, but it's not. I mean, a lot of Greco-Roman, Latin, Greek, and because this is the higher echelons are speaking these languages, and then it's trickling to the more public, masses. But Indo-European has the Romance languages, Spanish, Italian. It's got Slavic languages, East, West, Balto-Slav, like
Yeah.
really,
Can
really.
you, may I ask you a question? The Slavic languages, I mean, that is when you know the history of the word and the history of the words, you understand how ridiculous this German Third Reich concept was. We are Aryan, we are better. They're all more the same. That's just, these are not different things, but when did actually Slavic language, do you mind to mention a little, why is it Slavs are called Slavs?
Well, that's really funny. Just want to mention that Hitler is a huge loser, and he's
Oh, thank
um,
you.
massively so. But Slav actually comes from the word, slov. In Russian, slava is like it means words, and slov means word. There is this competing theory, but it's not true. Like this guy Max Vassmer, who's like the guy for Russian etymology, disproved this. But people think slava means power, and they think that's where Slav came from, but it really just means word, slov. So Slavic, which is really funny, it's like wordic people, Slavic people. But Slavic, so okay, Proto-Indo-European, 6,500 years ago. All right, that starts people imperishable fame, like that grunting, ooh, ooh, me, you, numbers. Then around 3,000 years into that, you have this branching off into Proto-Slavic and Proto-Iranian. And you have those are very old. Actually, Persian is like one of the oldest living. What is it? It's like one of the oldest. Uh, Hold on, let me see. One of the oldest living languages.
It
Hold
is
on.
one of the oldest living languages.
It's kind of a crazy thing.
Yeah, and that is, and I think what something that is very unusual about Persian, it was developed pretty long time ago. Like
Yeah.
I can read still text from that are 2,000 years old Persian text. I still
Mhm.
can understand that, read it and listen to it and understand that. It sounds funny, the words are different, but
Yes.
there are very few languages that you can go and like even Middle English, you put a
Yeah,
Middle
yeah,
English text,
totally.
but you cannot make sense of it at all. So, and I
Yeah,
think that part of Persian is very interesting that it,
yeah.
even though it has developed, it has stayed intelligible to this date. So, but so we have you told us a little about the history that it was developed around the Caspian Sea. This or the
Right.
Please, what
Yeah.
happened there 6,000 years ago?
Yeah, 6,000 years. Well, really quick on the retention. Yeah, it's the longest surviving language of the Iranic family. That's what it was. And it's it's yeah, the fact that you can still it's intelligible in any way is amazing and really actually like hats off to the community of speakers because that's their, think of somewhere like, Armenia, they have really preserved that language and culture so powerfully. And they're so like you could read old Armenian texts today, have kids at UCLA read that and have it be completely intelligible. Okay, so about the Russian origins, I just took some notes. Okay, Pi, Proto-Indo-European emerged 6,500 years ago. 3,000 years ago, you have the branching off Proto-Indo-European and Proto-Slavic. I'm sorry, Proto-Iranian, Proto-Slavic. This is where you're having that first encounter where we're getting some of the borrowings that I'm going to share towards the end of our talk today. So you have like these different tribes, these like really highly skilled horsemen, nomadic tribes, equestrian nomadic tribes like Scythian or Sarmatians. I don't know if you ever heard of these, but they basically were in around that area, the Pontic Caspian steppe area, which steppe just means like a grassland, these grasslands. And they interacted with each other around second millennium BC. Okay, this is like classical antiquity, Bronze Age, just a long time ago. And they had, that's where like the Boch, like that's where that borrowing would come from. And then okay, so then that started developing. And then for Russian, there was these Slavic branches, East and West. West is like Russian, Ukrainian, Belarusian. East and the rest of them is like, Chechen and like Czech and a lot of those other ones. I'm sorry, it's just not coming to mind. Then with Proto-Indo-European, with Proto-Iranian, I keep doing that. With Iranian, you're going from Old Persian, which is like yeah. What were you gonna say?
The Old Persian, it's called Pahlavi. It's what we call it. The last dynasty in Iran, they called themselves Pahlavi. Their name wasn't Pahlavi. They called themselves Pahlavi to intonate, to get connection to the Old Persian language. That's just the name. Like the Windsor, they called themselves Windsor because the castle was there and they wanted to be associated with the Windsor, the kings in England. They were actually German. They were all German, but they wanted to call themselves after the Castle Windsor. So the Castle Windsor was before the Windsor the family. And so, sorry, that was just a trivia. Go ahead.
Speaking of dynasties, Old Persian started being spoken at the Achaemenid dynasty.
Correct.
Back in the day. So that region is Pars. That southwestern region of Iran is really where Persian came from. Fars, that P and the F are interchangeable. So Farsi, Pars. Right. So then it went into, so Old Persian is actually really similar in timing and structure to Sanskrit, just to give you an idea of how long ago that is. And then from Old Persian came Middle Persian, and then, the Farsi we know and love today. And that all kind of paralleled with the West's Slavic, Russian development. And the two most formative points in which they were encountering each other, Irano-Slavic encounters, was that second millennium BC. And then you have like the more modern 16th century, like geopolitical, we're talking access to the Volga River and Caspian Sea for trading and economic purposes. And that's where you have more recent borrowings. And I'd love to share those in a little bit whenever we're ready. Please. But you want to share them now?
No. Well, yeah, it's your you share it as you wish. But what's very interesting is that that if you follow the origin of the words, you can see how they branch out of each other, the languages. It is almost like if you look at the genetic of a chimp and a human, you can follow up and find out when they branched out of each other. Is there something like that in language that you follow words and they're exchange? Yeah, please go ahead.
Well, that's why it's the shape of a tree, which is also the shape of like capillary system, lightning
Mhm.
strike. I mean, this is patterns
True.
of Lee, right? It's like
Mhm.
these self-similarity principles. What happens is that it's like copying each other and then it's like moving through and branching. And I mean, that shape, it is exactly like a peeling off, it's like a peeling off, and it's obviously derives from, so then it's like more peeling and more peeling. um, as far as specific examples, I mean, just the, you know, chronology of any language, the old to middle to late with English, with Persian, old Church Slavonic, that's like another branch of Russian, of Slavic that was just for clergy and is still used in like Georgian churches and stuff. But that's probably a good example, actually, like old religious language that was basically like reserved for men of the edifices, whatever religious centers they had. Like a lot of times, it was Latin at the Vatican. It was Latin that was only reserved for the intelligentsia and the clergymen.
Mhm.
And that's like an example of like a really tiny shootout, like not much of a change, but
Yeah.
still it's not identical. But that there is a lot of, there has to be intentional preservation. Look at like Celtic, right? They
Mhm.
make like governmental efforts to preserve and to not keep it from shooting out, to keep it like in the same branch, to not have the branch move. But things like English, like, oh my God, there's so much and it's so elastic because internet slang, like this thing is just, it's like a curly cued branch. Like we are just,
Yeah.
but the thing is the spelling and stuff, it's at the same time, it's really static. Like 600 years we've been using some of these words. And I think,
Why, I apologize. Why do you think English became the world language? I mean, how did we end up now using English as the world language?
I mean, money.
Money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what sculpts a lot of the world today, which
Mm.
kind of sucks if you ask me. It's not very,
So
yeah.
what if, let's say, before we go to, I want to really use your understanding of the history of the individual words, but if you could choose knowing what you know now, if you would choose a language to be a world language, I know there has been some examples, people have tried that and all failed. What language would you think, or what combination of language would you think would be a best world language?
I just feel like to speak Mandarin, you have to be pitch perfect because there's so much discernment between like the tiniest change in tone and meaning something completely different. So I think that would benefit everyone if everybody had like a really sharp ear. That's like another way to show you how much language defines your sensory experience as a human. It's like, you hear like sharper differences, like you hear more, there's more um like modulation to what you're picking up on, even like with kids with longer names or more nicknames or whatever. It's like what you're being attentive to is more like, so it feels like Mandarin would be a great
But
language.
I think the problem with the Mandarin is that lots of people would have difficulty to pronounce it. Like we have actually two um, Chinese people here, originally Chinese people here, and one of them is from Shanghai, one of them is from Beijing,
Yeah,
right?
I think so.
And even sometimes they disagree.
Yeah, they speak they don't understand each other's.
I think they understand if they talk official Mandarin.
Yeah,
But if they
their own
talk the
dialects.
dialect, it's really difficult. Now I understand. Like 40 years ago, 50 years ago, somebody was trying to make a word language called Esperanto.
Yeah.
Have you heard of that?
Well, it was really ambitious.
Yeah.
And there's actually another version of that right now.
Is
This
it?
guy, yeah, he's doing like this like inter-Latin language. It's
Mm.
really cool. And I think like it's intelligible from like the Portuguese point of view,
Mhm.
from the Spanish speaking ear, from the Italian and English. I understand what he's saying. But it is such a perfect interstitching of these romantic branches of language. And I don't even know how he developed the system for it, but it's so bulletproof. And I think that that actually has promise. If he could
Mhm.
take it to, because this is also an individual's effort, which is amazing. Same with Esperanza. It was this guy who he had a followership for some reason already. I want to say for religious purposes. And it was like he made Esperanza to kind, because what do you use language for? You use it to identify. It's a huge identifier. Um, and you use it to, yeah, to identify who's in your in group. The other, this idea of other is very much uh, reinforced by language and
Mhm.
having different languages. I, of course, love diversity in language, but it would be nice if we all had a base that we could meet on. Um, that wasn't difficult for everyone. But also, if you think about it, it's like if with enough exposure, it's not even a matter of difficulty. It's when you think about it as plugging into something, it's really just about getting your brainwave to match, like frequency match, but that often comes from being dropped somewhere and having no choice but to speak it, having no other way out but speaking it, because we're so wired to
Mhm.
communicate. Your brain and body will do anything to be able to have a channel of communication.
Now, I would love to have, you're a TikToker, and I love your TikTok channel. And if people are looking for, it's called Lily Beck, right? Your
Yeah,
TikTok.
at Lilian Beck. But yeah, Lilianbeck. I do etymology content, really just fun stuff.
Oh, very fun, very fun.
Yeah.
But let's go few of your TikTok content that it's so interesting. Pick up few of the words that whichever are your favorite, and explain to us this intertwined kind of history and the language things.
Hmm.
What are your three best words that you would like to teach
There.
us about their origin?
Sure. Okay. I have a few. I definitely want to keep room for the Irano-Slavic borrowings, which I'll keep separate. But something I just recently got like tickled by was the obsess. I thought obsess was very funny. It's Latin based. You have ob meaning to turn. What was it? Hold on. Ob meaning. Hold on. It's really fun. Opposite. So ob meaning opposite. And then you have ses coming from sedere to sit. So obsess means to sit opposite from, like in the most creepy way, like sit opposite from and
You're
like keep
obsessed
tabs
with
on.
me.
I think it's the other
Yeah,
way
exactly.
around.
So obsess being opposite from and sedere to sit kind of reminds me of superstition, super meaning over, and stare meaning to stand. So superstition is standing over, obsession is sitting away from, sitting opposite of, and
Mhm.
just like obsessing over. There's also something like awkward. Awkward is really funny. It's like Old Norse to Middle German, but you have awk meaning turn the wrong way, and then you have ward meaning to turn towards. So it's autological, meaning it explains itself. It itself is an awkward etymology, meaning
Yeah,
to, yeah, turn towards being turned away from. That's what awkward means. So
that's cute.
that's a really funny one. Do you have something like rabota? Robot comes from Russian rabota, which means like menial work.
Well,
Rabota.
I thought that was the Czech word, but probably they're all connected.
Mhm.
You know,
Depends
yeah,
on.
I go, please explain to us the origin of robot, because I'm called robot in this place. So
uh,
explain my origin.
your origin. So, robot, rabota, it actually came from a play in like the 30s. It's actually fairly contemporary. But rabota in Russian is still a very common word. Ты делаешь работа, you do work. It
Mhm.
used to have way more of a connotation of like really like painstaking menial work that is nobody really wants to do. So do you relate to
Nobody wants to do my work.
No.
that? And so it, out of the play, the character that was this machine that the protagonist created. He named him robot. Yeah,
And it stuck.
Yeah,
and it's
yeah. Actually, the lots of word creations are from our literature. It's interesting that the literature is using the language to convey a message, but then once in a while they created something completely new that sticks, and then and that's not that rare.
What's another example?
Actually, I was just listening to a TikTok not long ago that they went over multiple words that they came from actually science fiction.
Yeah.
Like robot is one of them. The other one was cyberspace. Like everybody talk now about cyberspace. That was actually a word that was created in a science fiction, Canadian science fiction novel and so on. But I want to know more about, that many of the terms that we use in English, that and when you look at them, that sometimes the word we get it from, like there are some words that we get it from French, then we give it back to French, and then we take it back again.
Yeah.
And that was really amazing, how fluid is this how we get the words from other places and so on.
Yeah.
Now, what words do you know that from Russian that we use in English all the time?
I mean, from
And we are
Russia.
getting really close, I think.
I know. I think more we could talk on like Shakespeare is a great example of what you're talking about. Literature having such an impact on
Language.
modern English. There's crazy words this guy came up with. I mean, like lonely. He made up the word lonely. What were they using for that before? I don't know. Isn't it crazy?
He didn't
Dwindle.
even created a letter. I think he added few letters to the English.
Oh, I didn't know
language.
that.
Yeah, I think Shakespeare added few letters, X and something else he added. They didn't exist in the English language.
Oh yeah, maybe because it used to be like CKS instead.
Yeah. So yeah, lonely. What
Yeah,
else?
lonely. There's lots. I mean, swagger. He made swagger. That's
That
also
one
like,
really stuck.
What is a swagger?
yeah, that one really stuck.
Being cool, kind of like.
Oh,
right?
wow.
Swagger. Why do you guys think that certain words stick? That I genuinely wonder. Why do because I don't know the answer. Why do
So-
certain words stick and some don't?
Lily, why do some TikToks go viral and some others are 10 times better don't? I don't. That is such a complex kind of.
I think it'd be the same way that fashion sticks or like art sticks is people like it and people keep using it.
Yeah.
There's like a collective consciousness, like a collective
Yeah.
taste or something.
yeah.
Reference.
Okay.
But I'm interested to learn about these borrowed words.
Okay, yeah. Let's get the borrowed words.
From Russian, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Irano-Slavic borrowed words. Woohoo. Okay. Let's have a whole list here somewhere. Okay. Autobus. Does that remind you of anything, Hamid?
Yeah.
Autobus.
Autobus?
Autobus.
Well, there's a autobus is actually like bus, like truck.
Yeah, autobus. Yeah, off the bus. Yeah, that's also autobus. That's like also Latin. That's Indo-European. But autobus means watermelon in Russian, and it's directly borrowed from Persian, where it means big cucumber. Autobus, big cucumber. You have something like suitcase, chimadan in Russian, chimadan.
Madame.
Yeah, chimadan. That chima coming from cloth, jima. And then don is related to the word for container. So chimadan is like cloth container. Also that chima is in pajamas. Pajama in Russian too, pajamas.
Pajama.
You're welcome. We gave you the word for pajamas.
You love pajamas?
Not necessarily.
But yeah, pajamas is a leg cloth, but that suitcase and pajama sharing that jama root is really fun.
That's interesting.
Yeah, there's sapok, which is Russian for boot. That comes from the old Persian word for hoof, like a horse's hoof, which makes sense because they were such skilled horsemen. Proto-Iranian tribes were crazy skilled on the horse. Like I just imagine them doing like stuntman kind of stuff. And then obviously we were saying boch. That's a big one.
But do you think?
Borrowing the word for God, boch,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
really big one. If you
So-
ask me, yeah.
No, in English, you know, there are lots of English words actually. They have gone from you know, Indo-European, Persian to Greek to Latin to French, then to English, and that is the origin of a lot of word we use. Is like, you know, the most famous one is paradise. Which is comes from Pardis, Persian word for garden, heaven garden, or something like that. So, but yeah, it is interesting to follow those words, and you see as well how they have been sometimes bastardized, used for different meaning, and so on. But this has been really interesting. We are coming toward the end, I believe. Amanda is at how much time do we have, Amanda?
2 minutes. Actually, I would love if we did a part 2 to talk about words that had negative meanings that we've changed to have good meanings or something
or
along.
vice versa.
Yeah, or vice versa,
Really good.
because I know that there's a lot of words in pop culture that have negative meanings, and then we kind of like take them and we're taking ownership of them and not letting them be negative. I think that'd be a really fun
And like, you know,
conversation.
a very common word is the word gay.
Yeah,
It was
gay.
meant to be a negative thing, but then the community took over, say, yes, we are.
Wasn't it meant to be a positive thing? Like gay
No.
meant happy?
Well, yeah, but
Originally, yeah, gaiety.
yeah, it
But
was.
there's a reclamation. You're right. There's a
But then the people start using it as a happy and so on. They use it as a negative things, but the gay community took over, said, yep, we are. And then they turned again something positive. Yeah, that definitely requires a session too.
Yeah.
Of the things, the words, what do we call that?
We'll come up with something.
We come up
Yeah.
with something.
Actually, just as a teaser, the word nice is a perfect example. It used to be negative and it was turned into a positive.
What?
What? I
You're
need
very
okay.
nice. That's for Minnesota. Have you ever heard the word Minnesota nice?
No?
Now it makes sense.
Minnesota nice is passive aggressive.
Make total sense. Well, it has been a total pleasure.
Thanks so much, Lily.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lily.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for watching. This was Essence of History. Today we talked about the history of words. I'm Amanda Armagas.
I'm Dr. Abbasi.
And I'm Lily Beck.
And
Thank you.
please check Lily's TikTok. It's
Check out my
it's
TikTok.
amazing. Thank you.